I've been up to a lot of games and in the locker room a ton, but not why he's been here because they were on the West Coast trip. It was around the holidays. They had he hasn't played a whole heck of a lot of home games that I've been able to kind of get a feeling that he was been out. He was at the last 2 games he hasn't played. How do you think Jimmy Butler is fitting in both on and off the court?
Yeah, Mike, you made a really good point. I think, we were both around a team, obviously a good amount, but I think our interaction with him has been limited, for various reasons, like you said, whether it be injury issues, a lot of away games, West Coast trip or whatnot. And it's kind of tough to get a read necessarily on how he interacts behind the scenes with his teammates. From what you've seen, he seems to be getting along with them fine. He jokes around with TJ a lot. It seems to be good. But I definitely think there's some, questions that the team has to keep in mind in terms of Jimmy moving forward. I don't think that they're considering or they should consider moving him prior to the trade deadline. I've seen that thrown around. But I think they'll use the rest of this regular season and obviously the playoff run with him to really gauge his fit with the team and with Embiid. I think it's still, potentially up in the air. I think things have been overblown nationally. I think it's definitely smoother than, some of the national reports might have you believe. But I think that there's still some questions that need to be answered and that the team will use this, next 3-4 months to, really get a gauge to exactly how he fits in the team now and moving forward.
Why do you think, they beat the Rockets very handily. Now, the Rockets were shorthanded. They beat the Spurs the other night. Why do you think they have, I don't want to say have looked more fluid without Jimmy Butler, but do you agree with that they have looked more fluid without him?
Yeah, I certainly think it's worth noting, too, that, a couple of their most impressive wins of the season, that Rockets game, obviously, and the Spurs game, were without Jimmy. And obviously, I think that the team runs through Joel, obviously, whether Jimmy's on or off the court. And Ben has been playing excellent basketball the past, basically all season, but especially the past month and a half. He's really kind of taken it to another level. Now that he's been playing a little bit more in the post, doing things a little bit differently. But those two really determine how the team goes. And whether, Jimmy really wants to or not, he's kind of, he's the third guy he was brought in to be the third piece of the puzzle. And those two guys have been playing so well recently. And then you plug in a guy like Corey Brewer, who's just, a versatile role player. And I think, you see how good those two can be and take a team. Now, at the end of the day, in a playoff series with that lineup of Corey Brewer and you're playing Boston and it's a half-court set, yeah, they might still struggle to get a basket, and that's when you want, to be able to turn to a guy like Jimmy. But throughout the regular season, you saw this team win 52 games last year, obviously with Dario and Robert in the starting lineup. And I think even if they hadn't made the trade for Jimmy and kept those same lineup, it would have been another, 50-something win season. So I think Jimmy's really going to be ultimately judged here this season by what they're able to do in the postseason and how he's able to, kind of be that guy that they can go to in these close playoff games, half-court sets when the game really slows down. But in the regular season, Joel himself, or we saw Ben last year when Joel was out, either of those guys are enough to, carry a team to against a lot of these other teams. And the fact that they've both been, really playing well at the same time, and I think they're playing together as good as you've seen, obviously, since they've been together, I think, in Ben and Joel. And, the rest of the team is really starting to seem kind of gel a little bit. We've seen bench guys step up. Bolden, obviously, Shamit's been playing well, and Corey Brewer's inserted that energy. So I think it's just a matter of feeding off their top guys, and that kind of just funnels down to everybody else.
Michael Kaskey-Blomain, 97.3 ESPN.com. 76ers tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, right here, 97.3 ESPN. Hey, Butler's got the wrist problem. Is there any concern? Do you know anything more further? I know they were very vague about it the other night when I was up there, but any further information? He's going to go see a specialist about this wrist.
Only the comments from Brett Brown today that made it seem as though, Brett emphasized that it's really a precautionary thing and that they, hope for him to be back at some point on this upcoming 4-game road trip. They have, the Nuggets, the Lakers on Tuesday, the Warriors on Thursday, and then the Kings next Saturday. So basically a full week. They hope that he's back at some point during that week, and it's more, it's more precautionary. But at the same time, I think, you and I can obviously attest as, all Sixers fans, when you hear, that a player on the team's going to an outside specialist, with the history of injuries in this organization right now, I think it's, reasonable for fans to be a little worried. But I think Brett would have, let on if it was a little bit more serious than what it is. And at this point, it seems like it'll be precautionary. But, if he's not back still, after this road trip at that point, I think it would be fair to be, be worried. But otherwise, if he's back in the next few games, I don't think it should be a big issue.
And then Joel, they've been talking about him being questionable for a couple of games. There's been a lot of questions like, hey, why don't you just sit him? Barkley came out and ripped him, and he scores like 35. So it doesn't seem like he is in any problems, but is this just them picking a game to sit him and thinking, you know what, it's Denver, there's the altitude, why don't we sit him tonight?
Yeah, that, and I think also if you actually look at the schedule, sitting him on that game gives him a full 5 days. They've been off since Wednesday, and then if he's sitting that Saturday game, they don't play again until Tuesday. So that's basically a full 5-day schedule for him to rest, especially if he knows well ahead of time that he's not playing in that game like he does. He doesn't have to go through, the preparations where it's a pregame decision. He can just chalk it up as rest from the beginning. And I think, it's disappointing. I'm personally disappointed because obviously I think we all wanted to see the matchup of all-star centers and, Embiid and Jokic out in Denver. But it makes sense time-wise if you look at it that way. And, I've personally said that I thought that he should, even though we said the back has been better, obviously his long-term health is what's important. And if this team, really wants to make waves in the playoffs, they're going to need him out there and healthy. So, give him a rest day when he can get 5 days off, and then hopefully he'll be back for, the rest of the road trip.
Are you starting to trust Shamet, Bolden, Korkmaz as playoff rotational players? Any of them?
Definitely. Shamet and Bolden, yeah. I think Korkmaz has been obviously affected by the addition of Corey Brewer, and if Corey continues to play as he's been playing, he was obviously just signed for the second 10-day contract. There's a good chance if he continues to contribute, could be picked up for the rest of the season. And at that point, I think he would, probably eat into any of the potential playoff minutes that Korkmaz might see. Brett, obviously has trust in veterans, and he obviously has seemed to take a liking to Corey Brewer pretty quickly. But the other two, Shamet obviously and Bolden, I think have both shown that they can, while they still have a way to go, especially to be able to be legitimate contributors in a playoff series, I think you've seen enough growth from both of them over the course of this season that, Brett trusts them in big minutes. They're getting the experience as much as they can in the regular season. It's not like they're only playing in garbage minutes. Both of them are, coming in first quarter legit crunch time minutes, and they're contributing, which is, for rookies is really all, or young guys, it's all you can ask for, prior to playoff experience. So I do think that if they continue to play like they have, and that trust with Brett will grow. Obviously it depends on if any moves are made in the next couple of weeks leading up to the deadline that shakes up the rotation. But I do think that both of those guys are earning Brett's trust to the point that we would see them in the playoffs.
Speaking of the deadline, I would assume the Sixers' most attractive trade piece, besides the Heat pick, would be their own pick this year. They would have to probably include that almost in anything, you think?
Most likely, and maybe an expiring, the Amir's small deal. But yeah, it would probably be draft picks at this point, unless they were obviously willing to dangle Markel's potential out there. But as far as I've heard, that's off the table. They're not, they're turning away any potential interest in Markel. So with that being the case, it would have to be, really their own picks moving forward, or that Miami pick in 2021.
Real quick, Brett did have a media availability today. Did they update Markel at all?
Yeah, actually, he did talk about Markel. He said that he'll be with the team on this upcoming road trip for the 4 games, so he'll continue to be with the team, but that he's still only in a rehab capacity. He's not yet got back into any sort of basketball activities. He's not participating in like full basketball practice with the team or anything. He's just with the team there physically. And Brett said he doesn't expect that to change over the course of the road trip. So he'll be out there and he'll be continuing to, do the rehab that he's been doing to get his body back, but he's not, he's making no progress in terms of he's not out on the court with the team or anything like that. So, from that to me, it still seems like, I thought maybe after the All-Star break at the earliest, to me, it seems that would be, the earliest that he'd be able to come back at this point, considering that he's not even playing basketball yet.
Do you think Zaire Smith plays at all this year?
That's a good question, Mike. I mean, obviously, you think you'd like to see him. Brett obviously was really high on his potential and what he could bring, and if he could plug right in and play with that potential that he has, he could be a useful piece. But considering that he didn't really have any experience, he had the injury, he lost weight, he is what would his place be in the rotation? It just, I don't know where he would fit. It depends also, obviously, how quickly his, integration back into basketball activities. He's down in Delaware in the G League now, kind of getting his feet wet. I think it depends on how quickly that goes. But it's something to monitor. I honestly don't know the answer, though.
We talked about their own number one pick this year, and it's expiring. Any of the names that have been out there on the trade market entice you yet? Tim Hardaway Jr.'s name last night, Courtney Lee, I saw JaMychal Green, Bazemore, Prince, Dedmon, any of those guys?
It would be something small. Dedmon, obviously, I saw some talk, Dedmon and Jeremy Lin. Obviously, I think both of those guys could help the Sixers in a bench capacity if they wanted to swing some sort of a deal with Atlanta. Bazemore too. He's another guy that's kind of reminds me of Justin Anderson, the way he plays, but a little bit better. So he would be a useful bench piece. I'm not into any. I don't think the Sixers are even considering any sort of big moves for a guy like Mike Conley Jr. from Memphis has been mentioned to be available in trades. I don't think the Sixers are thinking anything like that at this point. So it would be something small scale like that. And then there's obviously guys on the buyout market. I think Robin Lopez in Chicago was a name that's mentioned as a potential buyout candidate. I saw Wesley Matthews' name floated as a buyout candidate in Dallas. Guys like that could be, whether or not that comes to fruition, I don't know. But guys like that is, I think, really who the Sixers will have their eye on. Like kind of how they got Corey Brewer, another addition or two like that could really strengthen the rotation is, most likely, I think, in my eyes.
All right, we'll keep our eyes on that. Of course, is February 7th is the NBA trade deadline, and some people think the buyout market may not be as plentiful as it was a year ago, where the Sixers, obviously landed a couple of big pieces in Bellinelli and Ersan Ilyasova. Michael Kaskey-Blomain covers the 76ers at The Real Mike KB on Twitter, and the Sixers a 4-game road trip, and then they'll be back home with a big one against Toronto, Denver, L.A., and close out this stretch against Boston. And that one will be interesting, and we'll have it for you here on 97.3. Michael, enjoy the weekend, man.
You too. See you when they get back to the East Coast.